Hi, my name is Ashton Webb, and I will be discussing my essay, The Tears of Frida Kahlo. Teardrops fall from many of the eyes, a device Kahlo used repeatedly in her paintings. They are intended as literal as well as symbolic tears, referring to the Christian Madre Dolorosa, as well as to the Mexican legend of La Llorona, another mourning mother. In Frida Kahlo's artworks, she exposed her injuries, even adding additional wounds to display the emotional pains in her life. Her paintings effectively convey the pain she experienced, both physical and emotional. Kahlo's physical and medical terrors were not something that many can comprehend, as polio now has a vaccine, and there are many more safety precautions to prevent trolley accidents, such as the one that she experienced. This study will discuss the use of tears in a select few of Kahlo's artworks and how the traumatic events in her life led her to depict herself that way. Frida Kahlo was born as Magdalena Carmen Frida Kahlo Calderon on July 6, 1907. When Kahlo was just 4 years old, she began to identify with the Mexican Revolution. She claimed that she was born in 1910 when the revolution was born. The same year, she contracted a devastating case of polio. Her right leg lost muscle mass and began to deteriorate, leading her foot to also stop growing. At 17 years old, she was on a trolley with her boyfriend traveling home from school. The trolley collided with a bus, leaving multiple people dead and many injured, Kahlo included. These physically damaging instances of her life caused medical problems for her until her death. The pain of Kahlo's surgeries haunted her for the rest of her life, and she displayed this in self-portraits through her tears. Each one of her physically traumatizing events caused problems for her later in life. She was unable to bear children, and she had chronic pain in her legs and back. In her diary, she describes how the physical and emotional pain she experienced was not something that she talked about with others. Instead, it was common for her to display her sadness in pain in her self-portraits. She would sometimes depict herself crying, as well as surrounded by objects that tied to a traumatic event. Kahlo has been called a surrealist artist. However, she often stated that she used traditional Mexican painting styles in her artwork. Kahlo stated, "They thought I was a surrealist, but I was not. I never painted my dreams. I only painted my own reality." This proves that when Kahlo painted, it was to display what was going on in her life. She was painting the pain that she was experiencing, and this trauma was her reality. Kahlo also said, "Really, I do not know whether my paintings are surrealist or not, but I do know that they are the frankest expression of myself." This might suggest that Kahlo was an expressionist. However, despite how she felt about her art, it has been categorized as Mexican surrealism. Pictured to the right is one of her more surrealist paintings. It's titled The Dream or The Bed, and she created it in 1940. Surrealism is an art movement that began in the early 20th century and is defined as this. Surrealism aims to revolutionize human experience. It balances a rational vision of life with one that asserts the power of the unconscious and dreams. The movement's artists find magic and strange beauty in the unexpected and uncanny, the disregarded and the unconventional. Although Kahlo believes that she was expressing her reality through painting, her artwork truly conveys a dreamlike and warped state of what she was experiencing. And to the left is Kahlo painting her portrait, The Two Fridas. This is an example of how this clearly could not be a reality and is definitely more of a surreal painting, as we see her two selves attached together by an artery in her heart. And it's one, her more traditional Hispanic Mexican heritage self, and the one on the right is her more European appearance, which she preferred. So to understand the paintings in this research, the viewer needs to understand Kahlo's complicated relationship with Diego Rivera. The muralist Diego Rivera came into Kahlo's life when she was young, and the relationship was considered turbulent and painful for both parties. This was just the beginning of a long relationship that would be beneficial and harmful to both artists. Upon reading Kahlo's diary, there are many entries that are simply a list of things that she may be thinking about: food, nature, animals. but most of all, her lover, Diego. The first painting that I will discuss in this essay is Henry Ford Hospital, which Kahlo created in 1932. This artwork is dreamlike and warps the reality that Kahlo was facing during this time, so this is also considered to be one of her surrealist artworks. She was haunted by all of her physical pain and suffering that she had experienced thus far in her life. Henry Ford Hospital is considered one of the artist's more surrealist paintings through the style and depiction of her tormenting memories. She used muted colors in the sky and in the objects to show that her life seemed to be fading away and that there was nothing she nor anyone else could do to stop it. Kahlo's insides, which are the pieces floating above her bed, demonstrate how her life was taken out of her body and she was without what makes her feel most like herself. The objects floating above her are an unborn male child, her pelvic bone, a pink orthopedic cast of a pelvic bone, a machine, and an orchid. Kahlo desperately wished for a son, and the loss of her child devastated her. She had believed that having a son with Rivera would end the affairs that he was having with other women. In the painting, she appears pregnant, which is showing, and she's bleeding out, which is showing that she was actually at the hospital due to her miscarriage. So that is the main reason why she depicted her baby's fetus as the most prominent part of this image. The pink cast of the pelvic bone to the left of the fetus represents her crushed pelvis from the trolley accident. Below that on the left is a machine, most likely alluding to her feeling as if she were part machine because of her back braces and her many surgeries over the years. The orchid was given to her by Diego, and it appears to be wilting. This is demonstrating how she feels like his love for her is fading. Not only do the floating objects represent her turmoil, but the tears falling from her eyes further express her feelings by reference to the legend of La Llorona. The legend of La Llorona is important to take note of when studying Kahlo's tears, especially in her paintings during the 1930s and 1940s. In La Llorona's grief after discovering her husband was having an affair, La Llorona drowned her two sons, then killed herself in the same way. She wanted to destroy all that her husband loved in the world. After her death, she was said to be wandering the earth crying, drawing children near to her so that she may have them as her own. She would drown these children so that they could be with her forever. Although Kahlo's vision is not as dark as Llorona's, the pain of losing a child and her willingness to do whatever it takes to have the child back is comparable. This painting was a call for help, showing that Kahlo felt like she had nothing and everything around her was crumbling. This painting, Henry Ford Hospital, was one of the last paintings that she completed before discovering the affair between her sister Christina and her husband. Kahlo says in her diary, "Why do I call him my Diego? He never was or will be mine. He belongs to himself." She knew that her relationship with Diego would not last, like the orchid in her portrait. However, she wanted to display that she was his. Her tears effectively expressed her feelings of devastation and heartbreak. The second painting discussed in this is going to be Memory the Heart, created in 1937. So after discovering the relationship between her sister and husband, Kahlo ceased painting for months. When she came to terms with the situation and began painting again, she came back with her piece, Memory the Heart. This painting shows a version of Kahlo with her heart on the ground, bleeding out and a gaping hole in her chest. Frida Kahlo here finds a pictorial means to express the anguish that she suffered during the affair between her husband and Christina, her sister. Her broken heart lies at her feet. Its disproportionate size symbolizes the intensity of her pain. She illustrates her feelings of helplessness and despair through her lack of hands. Kahlo's hair in this portrait is cropped like a boy and she's wearing European-style clothing, which was her favorite style when she was separated from Rivera. He always wanted her to be dressed in traditional Mexican clothing. In the background was her schoolgirl outfit and her Tijuana costume, and each set of clothes have one arm, with Frida standing there without arms and seems hopeless. She stands there with one foot on the ground and the other in the sea. The foot in the sea seems to be covered by a small shoe that resembles a boat. This is referring to the surgery on her leg that year. The yarn used to connect her with her other selves is red, resembling arteries. Kahlo's tears in this portrait, once again, are the only expression shown on her face. The pain she felt may have been real, but she was willing to stay strong through everything she was experiencing. Around the same time that she painted this portrait, she was writing love letters to Diego. Despite what she may have seen as the ultimate betrayal from her sister in Rivera, she always went back to him. And despite all of her tears, she still loved him with all of her bleeding heart, like the giant organ at her feet. The next painting discussed is going to be Broken Column, made in 1944. This portrait shows Kahlo in the depths of her suffering. Her physical condition was burdensome and she was consumed by it. This was during a time where she didn't write very much in her diary, but the things she did show and write were very depicting a lot of pain, and this was expressed through sketches of herself that she would scribble on her back, and her doctor at this time had decided to wrap her in a steel corset that would help ease her pain and support her back. However, she lost 13 pounds in 6 months and began fainting constantly. She was not getting enough nutrients in her body, and so this was leading up to the next portrait, but this was portraying the pain that she was experiencing with the corset at the time. Kahlo had suffered most of her life, but this was one of the most gruesome experiences she would ever face. In the painting, Kahlo gives the viewer a peek into what her pain and suffering was really like. Kahlo paints herself largely naked, leaving the spinal column exposed. Her spine is depicted as an ionic column, which leaves her immobile. The column is said to stand as a symbol of identity. She longed for her spine to be aesthetically astute and compares the broken building to her injured body. The nails almost blend into the background of the painting with the muted coloring, and it's all kind of neutral, showing that they were a constant and familiar sort of pain that Kahlo wanted to make apparent, but she didn't want them to be the focal point of her piece. Planted deep into her skin, the metal nails encompassed the pain that she knew well. The nails placement lower on her legs showed the leg pain that she was facing and had previously displayed in memory the heart. Congruent with the nails in her body are the tears stippling Kahlo's cheeks. Piercing white, the teardrops embody her pain. Like a symbol of the heart, the droplet shape is synonymous with sadness. At this time, she was also struggling in her relationship with Rivera and wanted to aggravate him through the painting, showing that she was nearly naked and not the perfect wife that he had wanted her to be. Traditionally, he really liked her in Mexican female dresses and large like head coverings. He really liked for her to be modest, but in this, she was rejecting that. She was breaking the mold and longed to stand against the stigma of the disabled. The dresses she typically wore covered her injuries that she was ashamed of. However, in Broken Column, she exposes them, opening herself up to the viewer. Just a year after creating Broken Column, Kahlo completed her work Without Hope. That one was created in 1945. On the back of this portrait, Kahlo had written, "Not the least hope remains in me. Everything moves in time with what the belly contains." This painting depicts her life after her back surgery was completed. She was losing a lot of weight due to the metal corset that she had tightly fastened around her waist. Kahlo had to be fed through a tube for an extended amount of time due to her weight loss and lack of appetite. She had no strength to sit up and eat, so this was the doctor's idea of how to fix that. This painting disturbingly conveys how the artist was living at the time. She was confined to a bed and was only capable of painting for 1 hour a day while laying down. The desert terrain around the artist in the painting also shows that she is alone and that there is no one and nothing that can save her. The landscape is also connected to dryness, which is a reference to her inability to have children. Her feeding tube hangs from her painting easel, showing that the illness she faces are prohibiting her from doing what she loves most. Kahlo lies beneath her blanket, which also appears to be covered in the microorganisms, such as those that are continuously infecting her already ailing body. Her tears in this portrait flow from her cheeks, showing the immense pain she was suffering through. The sun and moon appear in the sky, but the sun gives off radiating heat that would make the food in the painting even more unappealing. Kahlo would depict the sun and moon together on two sides of the landscape often. She depicted these in her other paintings, such as Tree of Hope, Remain Strong, and Portrait of Lucha Maria. Kahlo used the sun to symbolize her pain or as a symbol of negativity. The moon, in contrast, was a symbol of positivity. This was known as part of like her Mexican and Aztec heritage. Typically, in the Aztec religious history, they would symbolize or use the sun as a symbol of like sacrifice and pain, and the moon would be giving and kind and calming. And also, the moon can be seen as a symbol for feminine strength. A lot of times in her paintings, we know that she would portray herself with more facial hair, like a mustache. But in this one, she chooses to show her strength through the moon. Through her suffering, she was still trying to remain strong and weather through the storm. An intriguing object in the painting is the skull placed on top of the heaping pile of meat. The skull is surprisingly not symbolic, as it was an actual gift from her husband while she was in the hospital. You'll notice that there is a human skull amongst all the things being funneled into Frida's body. No, she did not try cannibalism in an attempt to gain back some weight. If you look closely, the skull has her name written on the forehead. This is one of the many gifts that Diego gave Frida while she was in the hospital. This painting seems to show that all hope is lost and that Kahlo had given up on herself. She was unable to move, to paint, to live freely. Her life was dedicated to the rejuvenation of her physical body, even when her mental and spiritual body needed comforting as well. However, in her diary at the time, she reminded herself with these words: "At the end of the day, we can endure so much more than we think we can." And this picture on the right shows when she was in bed rest and had just had her spinal surgery and she was trying to paint. This is the easel that she depicted in this painting, Without Hope, as the one that her funnel would hang from. So the last painting we will be looking at is Diego and I, created in 1949. This painting is a depiction of the emotional trauma that Kahlo faced in her relationship with her husband, Diego. He played an important role in her life, and this self-portrait with Rivera on her forehead is showing the impact that he had on her. By the end of the 1940s, there had been a drastic decline in Kahlo's health, and she was facing more pain than ever. However, this painting was not created to display her physical ailments, but her deteriorating relationship. While having many affairs in the past, Rivera's new fling with a film star created public scandal and led to rumors of him leaving Kahlo behind. This terrified her, for she was obsessed with her husband. The artist's hair was wrapped around her neck, showing that she was wanting to stop breathing from the intensity of her emotional anguish. The third eye that appears on Rivera's forehead alludes to how he saw Kahlo with a third sense. He knew what she was feeling emotionally, and he would use that information to cause her further pain. Rivera had left Kahlo many times before, but in this pit of despair, Kahlo felt worse than ever about their relationship. She missed her husband and still loved him deeply. Her obsession with Rivera was both love and infatuation. Despite this, she was never truly loved in her life, and she continuously suffered from her husband's affairs. Frida appears in the self-portrait with a mustache, which is a common theme in her paintings when she wants to appear more masculine and stronger than how she saw herself. Her strength is unwavering, and even though she is crying and her hair appears to be choking her. This is a symbol that her time with Diego Rivera is almost up, and she feels as though she is smothering. His image on her forehead is a reminder that he is not only her partner, but also part of who she is. Though they never had a healthy relationship, the two of them were together until Frida's death in 1954. It was said that she died of a pulmonary embolism. However, suicide is suspected due to the toll that her illnesses and her relationship with Diego had taken on her for so many years. Frida Kahlo painted hundreds of portraits during her lifetime that depicted her in tears. The tears were both literal and figurative, showing the emotional and physical pain that she had suffered. Due to her early onset of polio and trolley accident when she was a teenager, she dealt with surgery after surgery and ailments that would last her entire life. Some periods in her painting portray more happiness than others, but as seen in this study, the extreme emotions of sadness and pain followed her until her death. Although the artist appears to have the same facial expression in each painting featured in this essay, she uses symbols and teardrops to show the viewers what she was dealing with in her health. From having polio as a child to her trolley accident, from her tumultuous relationship with Rivera to her miscarriage, and through countless surgeries, Kahlo was never relieved of her suffering. But Kahlo showed strength when strength did not seem possible. Kahlo's devastation over her loss of her children, inability to move freely, and her constant pain led to the tears that haunt her self-portraits. Painting was a way for her to show her the inner pain that she felt and to be able to share this darkness with her audience. She does a beautiful job of portraying pain and suffering. Without this window into her thoughts and feelings, not much would have been known about the artist, and her depictions of pain would not have influenced the world and helped others to see her true suffering. Thank you so much for watching my presentation on the Tears of Frida Kahlo. Here are my links that I used and books that I read over the last couple of months to study up on Frida Kahlo. But thanks again for watching. Have a great day.